I'm yet again sweating in Tennessee, vaguely somewhere around Nashville, in unmarked brick buildings. I wonder what I do for a living. I wonder if I've ever made a video explaining that so that you can understand that I'm not some enigma that was just born confident and knowing what I'm talking about. That in fact it took 34 years of my life to get to the point where I can know what I'm talking about, to understand hair loss, and to be emotionally intelligent enough to handle any comments that would come in like that. Had I been doing this at age 30, I wouldn't be good at what I do. But fortunately, I'm 36 and now I'm good at it. Which, speaking of, comment on a video that I made right after that. Hair loss, hurt feelings, and how I overcame them both. This sounds fun. Wings K has this to say, quote, "Usually the people who stress about their hair loss at an early age are the ones who are balder. Has anyone ever made fun of your balding?" End quote. I like this. I think we can do something with this. I think this is a good set of questions here. I think probably the best way I can really talk about the first thing, about how it's younger guys that are worrying about their hair loss the most because they're balder first. They're the ones who are probably some of my biggest supporters of this channel as far as actually watching my videos and stuff, is to actually answer this question that follows. Has anyone ever made fun of your balding? Here's the takeaway from this video. I'm gonna get to the point right now, and then we're gonna expand on it. He says, has anyone ever made fun of your balding? And here's my response to that. It depends on what made fun means. Because here's what I want to, and I'm gonna tell some personal stories with you to illustrate this, but here's what I want to say. What constitutes made fun of? Because here's what I'm gonna say. There's pointed out, there's acknowledged, there's those things, and then there's teased, made fun of. And I guess there's a thin line between pointed out, acknowledged, versus teased and made fun of. There's a thin line between those two. I'm going to share with you 4 instances where my hair loss was acknowledged by someone else without me ever saying a word to start that conversation. And then at the end of this video, you get to decide whether they were making fun of me or whether they were pointing it out, and whether or not my reaction had anything to do with the difference in those labels. Let's get started. I'm 36, keep that in mind. At age 25, I was in Norwood too. I see my grandmother, hadn't seen her in a while. I'm having lunch with her, sitting across from her. And she looks up and I noticed she was looking at my hairline. And she says, "Well, Nick, looks like your hairline's starting to recede." That's how it is for all the Shell men, you know, because our last name is Shell. That's how it is for all the Shells in our family. They get that receding hairline in their 20s. Now, my reaction to that was nothing worrisome. I already knew that. I had always known that. I had always known that. That's what happens to the Shell men. They start losing their hair in their 20s. And I was 25. I was halfway through my 20s. I wasn't bothered by that comment. I thought it was strange that she brought it up, but okay. She mentioned it. That was at age 25. Let's flash forward. Age 29 and a half, my son was a newborn. He's now 6.5. I was sitting on the couch holding him. My wife walks by the back of me, overhead, and she points out, "You know, as much hair as you have on your head, as thick as your hair is, you'll always just kind of be thin in the back, won't you?" And she was laughing about it. Like, not laughing at me, but just kind of laughing as she said it. Which in hindsight, I understand, means that I love you so much as you are. I recognize it, but I don't care. That's the translation. But I wasn't emotionally mature enough at that time at age 29 and a half to understand that. So that upset me. Let's move on to the next time. Age 31. Now I'm in full Norwood 3 by this point. And a guy who is in his mid-50s with a Norwood 2, barely, walks by and says, "Man, Nick, you got your hairline going up. Yours is really going up there. I don't really have that problem." And I just laughed because I'm like, yeah, you're right. What can I say? You're 20 years older than me. You've got more hair. Lucky you. And it didn't bother me. About 6 months later, another coworker walks by who was in his mid-40s, Norwood 1, walks by and says, "Man, Nick, looks like you're thinning in the back there. Looks like you're thinning in the back there." To which I instantly admitted, yeah, that's true. It's been pointed out. My hair is thinner back there. Hey, if I can keep the hair up here, I guess I'll be all right ultimately, because most people just see this, right? I had joked around about it, and that was the end of it. It didn't emotionally affect me. The only time it emotionally, what is going on? They're building some kind of secret government building that probably won't show up on Google Maps. So out of those 4 times, what you can see is only one time did it emotionally affect me, and that was when it was my wife, when my wife pointed it out. Of course, as we know, if you watched the video I made last night, that actually he's talking about hair loss, hurt feelings, and how I overcame them both. If you've seen that video, you know that 2 years ago I stopped giving my wife permission to offend me, meaning it had nothing to do with her anymore. It was me making a conscious decision that no one can offend me, not even my wife, and I wouldn't let those things bother me. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. Life is better now. So, let's get back to where I was going with this. Has anyone ever made fun of my balding? What do you think, as an outsider hearing these stories, out of these 4 instances when people have brought up my hair loss? See, in hindsight, as a mature 36-year-old man who no longer allows anyone to hurt his feelings, I'm gonna say none of those people, not even my wife, were making fun of me. In fact, my wife was showing me, in a backwards way, her acceptance of me with the hair loss. That's how I see it now. But see, it depends on how ready you are for this. Because like I said, with my grandmother, with the other 2 coworkers, they told me what I already knew at that point. I already knew that the shell men in our family start losing their hair in their 20s. It starts with the receding hairline. I already knew that. And I already knew that I was thinning in the back because my wife had already pointed out years before that. So I already knew that. If you already know something and you accept it and embrace it, for me, I can't really be upset and say that they're making fun of me. And I think here's how I want to end the video. My theory is this. The difference between someone making fun of your hair loss versus pointing it out is your confidence level. It's relative, in other words. Because other people could say, well, Nick, they were making fun of you. And I'm going to say, nah. I mean, it's weird that they pointed it out because I wouldn't personally point out anyone's hair loss. I wouldn't do that. It's weird that it was pointed out. But to say that they were making fun of me, I think it's a matter of perception. I think it's a matter of how much confidence that you have. And that can go for anything. I mean, I've mentioned my height several times. I know that 5'9" is not that short. But you better believe that guys who are 6'2" like to point out the fact that I'm not tall. I totally don't care. I've been aware of my height for, ever since I was 15 and stopped growing. So it's by this point, I'm like, but what do you think about that? Can you understand where I'm coming from? My theory. Do you agree with me that ultimately the difference between someone making fun of you versus simply pointing something out about your hair loss is your perception of that? Whether or not you have embraced that about yourself or not, and whether you're okay with that. If you're okay with it, if you're okay with your hair loss and accept yourself as you are as a guy who's experiencing hair loss, no one's making fun of me. They're just pointing out what I already know. Does that make sense? Can you agree on that? Have I just kind of invented another theory to add to my bag of theories? And there's that building. There's the building where I've been doing this job for 5 years, sorting out that victorious mindset versus the victim mentality. I'm victorious. I've embraced this. People can make fun of me all day. I just see it as them pointing out the obvious. Yeah, I'm losing my hair.